I was in Costa Rica, fully immersed in my reality shifting experience, staying at this lush, garden filled eco village with multiple little cabins on the property run by this amazing hostess. And I was there for several months, and I switched from one casita to another. And I developed a relationship with the hostess, and I happened to be staying there around the night of my birthday. And she decided to host a little special ceremony for me, which I thought was very kind. And prior to the ceremony, I was in meditation and I thought, I don't know if I can go and socialize because I'm heavy in and out of different reality layers and I don't know how this is going to go. And I thought, no, this is a very nice gesture. I'm not going to back out. I'm not going to cancel. And I wanted to go. So I left my casita. It was nighttime. The crickets were like cicadas, really. And I was making my way to where her house was, where there was a little bathhouse with a sauna and some showers. I had never been to the saunas before, and I knew kind of the general vicinity of where it was at. And the moon was bright, I remember that, and there were a couple of solar lights that were lighting the path, but otherwise everything was dark, and you could just feel the energy and the vibrancy of nature around you. So as I was walking, all of a sudden, my reality shifted and there were no lights on. It felt like the space that I was walking through suddenly expanded. The sound changed, and I heard voices from what sounded like this impossibly far distance. The distance felt like, it was close, but it was far. It's so hard to describe. And I heard them calling my name, Sophia, Sophia. Dr. C is sort of my professional artist name, but I go by Sophia in my personal life because it reminds me to connect to the divine feminine essence. It's my spiritual name. And so I could hear Sophia, and I couldn't see the bathhouse. It was like it didn't exist. And I had this moment of panic. A, because I felt lost. B, I felt like I was in a different realm. And my friends and the people that were waiting on me were somewhere else. And I didn't know who I was going to bump into. And C, I felt a little discombobulated. This happens when you make really big shifts where you just feel like, whoa. The woman that was calling to me had a reality shift experience where she was walking on a road. She was staying at one of the other casitas. She was walking at night to a bar and a restaurant down by the beach. I was really close by. And she all of a sudden felt that she was ported into a completely different reality layer, a different city, a different time point. And she described it like being on DMT, and I've never done DMT, but this sort of like this, all of a sudden you're in a different realm. And then she popped back into where she was anchored into. So this is maybe a hotbed for reality shifting because she didn't have the framework of reality shifting. We were talking about it later, and she was confused by it. She was like, I don't know what happened. So she wasn't trying for this experience, but had it. Anyway, so all of a sudden I sort of panic inside, and I intentionally try to shift to where my friends are. And all of a sudden it's like, if I'm looking to the left, the right suddenly repopulates with everything that I expect in the light. The path lights are on, and I see the bathhouse to the right. But it took looking away and intentionally sort of guiding myself back to where I was trying to go. But I have to say, the magic that I felt and where I popped out into was really kind of cool, but it felt empty. It felt like there were no people there. And I was like, I've got a birthday party to go to. I don't know if I'm ready to, it's just like tap out entirely here. So this isn't the only time that I've felt that I've shifted into an empty place. But it was still magical. It's, again, kind of hard to describe. Anyway, so I was able to look to the left as I was walking, intentionally shift back, and then turn my vision forward to the path and then to the right, and allow things to morph back into what I expected. Just a little tip. And then the woman who was calling for me came out, and she was like, "Hey, we're over here." And her voice sounded normal, like she was in the same realm, the same proximity as me. So we had a beautiful singing ceremony in the sauna, and then we took a cold shower and had aromatherapy, and I had a massage, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. Now, what's interesting is that the hostess and I spent the evening, the rest of the evening in her casita. We were waiting on one of the neighbors who didn't join us for the sauna ceremony. And it was just her and I and her house. And she was making this beautiful dessert, and we were playing music, and it was a great moment. It was just like a really, really great moment. But we were waiting on one of the other neighbors who were going to come over and join us for the dessert and to socialize for a bit, and they never came. And an hour went by, and I think maybe another hour went by, and she held the dessert because we were waiting for them, right? And then she checks her phone. Get this, she checks her phone, and she has a message from the neighbors that say, "Where are you? Your house is dark and there's nobody there." We were sitting, literally, I have chills right now. We were sitting in the kitchen, which is adjacent to the porch that they would have walked up on. The kitchen was lit. The porch light was on. Her dog didn't even indicate that there was anybody out there. Nobody knocked. Like, we are in a room that is right next to the porch, and it's open air. So it's not like we're boxed in. We would have heard them. There's no way we would have missed them. And what I remember while we were socializing and listening to music is I remember that we were experiencing shift events. She seemed to be unaware of this because she didn't have the framework for reality shifting. And I've experienced shifting with other people who haven't always been awake. And this is why I'm really excited to bring some of you down to Mexico to have some reality shifting retreats when the time is right. And it's not right at this moment, but I know that we can shift collectively and we can experiment. I don't know where we're going. I'm not going to say we're going to go to heaven or anything like that, but we're definitely not going to go to hell. I'm not signing up to go to hell. If any of you mofos are trying to bring hell with you, you're not invited. You will get disinvited, and I will check the energy beforehand. Anyway, so I observed that we were shifting as we were talking. It's a physical sensation that you learn over time. There are actually many sensations that you can kind of feel. But I didn't expect that we were not going to be accessible by the neighbors. And I've always wondered what happens when you're shifting and people are trying to meet up with you, right? And I'm not saying that it always happens this way, but it appears that there is a different version of events that, like, the house was empty and nobody was home. The lights were off. The neighbors were confused, so they went back home. And she texted them and said, "No, we're here." And these are not the type of people to lie or anything like that. These are like straight up people, and really, really straight up people. So they came back and they were able to join us in a reality layer where we existed. And we socialized together. And while we were all talking, I had this really amazingly bizarre, really kind of magical experience where I could see the adjoining realm and I could see their higher selves attached to the avatars and like the non-human higher selves. And it was really, really, really special, really special. And I have seen something similar in my own experiences solo, but I've never been able to see other people's higher selves reaching through another dimension. And, you know, like when they talk about the holographic pushing through and we're almost in a shadow of higher dimensions, it was like I got a glimpse of the quote unquote immaterial attachments of the other entities that were surrounding the field around the physical form of the people. And it was beautiful. It was really a very, very magical evening. And what I have found is that in another experience, now fast forward a couple of months, I'm only about 30 minutes away from this property, and I'm staying at a place where it's just pure magic on this mountain. It's even called Eden, and it was by like happenstance. It's gone now, unfortunately, so you can't look it up and stay there. The property was given over to different holders, and I don't even know what's there anymore, but it was such a beautiful experience, and the souls that I met there were really, really unique and all on different points of the journey. And some of the experiences that I had there were out of this world. And what I observed is one time when I was walking back to my little suite, this was almost like a renovated old hotel that had multiple little apartments in it. And some of them had a kitchenette and a bathroom. Some of them only had a bathroom. Then there was a main house with a shared common kitchen and a pool, a shared pool, and a porch area. And it overlooked the most beautiful parts of Costa Rica. So you had the view of the ocean and you had the view of the mountains. And it was up kind of high, so it always had this fresh breeze. And what I observed is there would almost be different versions of the property and different versions of the people. So some people wonder, if I am reality shifting, are the people around me also shifting? And the answer is sometimes yes. And you will get to see almost like their higher self, and their skin tone will change like right in front of your eyes. It's really remarkable. They almost become shinier in a way, like their auric field becomes more magnetic, and the essence of who they are, like their highest, most beautiful, most graceful self, their goddess self will come out, or their godlike self will come out, and they'll carry themselves all of a sudden with so much poise and so much intention and so much presence and consciousness that it almost like warps reality around them when you're used to equivalently seeing them in their energetic pajamas. And so it'll be like you're used to, or sometimes you'll be used to seeing them in a negative vibe, and all of a sudden it's like you see the essence of that highest person being emanated from their avatar. And it's so strange. It's almost like their circulatory system is much more efficient. So they have this glow on them, and they have an aliveness to them that is so tangible but intangible at the same time. And their eyes almost have this like more aliveness, a light behind them. And if their eyes are blue, then they'll be like even more blue. It'll like almost like enrapture you, right? And the vibration of them just feels so much more pleasant. It's like looking at the creator version of them versus if you're used to them being in victim consciousness. And one time I was experiencing this shift collectively with them on the mountain, to where we would all like sit out on the front, or not the front porch, but the main porch by the pool, and enjoy some wine and enjoy spending time with each other. I go through periods of my spiritual awakening where I cannot drink. I'm in one of those periods now. I have to be stone cold sober right now, and my body just needs that. But this was a time that I was able to enjoy alcohol, and I haven't always been able to enjoy alcohol. And people say that alcohol has a negative effect and it brings down your vibration. And I say, no, not necessarily. What it does is it brings out the real person inside. And people sometimes have demons in them. And so it's like, the problem is you've got a demon in you. And it's not the alcohol that's the problem. It's the fact that you have unresolved demonhood attachments deep inside. And so alcohol lets you see what's under the hood, in my opinion, and other substances as well. And so I was enjoying wine out on the patio with them, and all of a sudden it was like looking at all of them coming online in a different vibration, which means I was coming online, right? So I was stepping into my highest expression. I was almost floating. I was walking around the property almost like levitating off the ground, not literally, but figuratively speaking. And my embodiment of the energy was so effortless that it was like I was a walking cloud. And then everyone around me was also of the same embodiment. And as we were sitting around this table socializing, it was like I could see this life force energy come into people's faces. There was this gentleman who was normally quite wrinkled looking. He was older. He was probably in his 60s or 70s. And all of a sudden it was like his wrinkles started to smooth out. And it looked like he was at least 10 years younger than he had been the day before. So you'll get to see these really amazing changes, these morphs in front of your eyes. And one time I was walking back, this was separate from the socialization with everybody on the mountain. I was walking back to my room and I was experiencing almost like going in between two different reality layers, but it seemed that I was in an intermediate zone. And so I was kind of like in the fold, and I use in the fold as terminology to mean different things at different times, but there's not a way that I can clarify that understanding at this point. So I apologize if it's a little confusing, but in this instance, I mean in the fold as between reality layer A and reality layer B. And you're kind of like walking on the edge of A and B, but it's this own distinct alleyway or this own distinct lane where you get to, this is my theory, I don't really know if this is how it works, but you get to choose consciously. And when I was walking in the fold, what I observed was this random person's, it looked like a woman, a random person's arm, but only a part of her arm that came into material view and disappeared, became invisible. And it was like her upper arm to her elbow and part of the forearm. And it was kind of like the triangle, like maybe she had her hands on her hips and I was just seeing the right section of her arm. And it came into view for maybe like a second before it disappeared. And what it felt like is I felt like I knew who she was. I felt like it was the girlfriend of somebody who was staying there. And it seemed like she was walking on the sidewalk in front of me, and I was walking a couple of feet behind her. But I was walking in the fold, and she was in one of the other realities. Maybe she was shifting, which is why I didn't see her whole body. I only saw her arm. But when I centered into a reality layer, I'm not sure if it was A or B. Instinctively, I want to say it was A. She, in that timeline, was not present. And so you will also get to observe people seemingly popping out of nowhere or disappearing. And this is really fun when it happens, except when you're driving, then it can be a little hair raising. But when you're walking along and all of a sudden somebody pops out of nowhere or disappears, you start to understand that the structure of the reality layers in front of your eyes, right? The structure of reality is almost like this honeycomb. And the way that you're interacting with it and the way that others are interacting with you as a reality shifter can be a little unpredictable. And I remember when I was first discovering this, being in Dallas, sitting on my balcony and watching almost people pop out of this. It looked like a force field. It looked like there was a neighboring dimension that I could visually see, where I would see the outline of them become silvery, right? Like I couldn't see the person and their material form. I would see this silver outline, and then they would materialize. And it reminds me of some of the photos that I took out in Death Valley National Park when I was quantum traveling and reality shifting, where I captured myself unbelievably at times in the same sort of silvery outline, as though I was shifting away or into the frame, but it would happen unevenly. So my skin, for example, would be completely invisible, and the outline of me would be this silvery outline, and then my clothes would be translucent, and you would almost see it was like I've saved them. I have this vision of having them in a gallery at some point. I don't know if that'll come in fruition in this lifetime, but I've been holding them back, but I'll show them sometime. So it's really, really special, because what you will observe is when you are observing invisible people, you will see this shimmering outline of them before they come into view as they are walking in between dimensions. This is how I have it conceptualized. There could be another explanation for all of this, but in the framework of reality shifting, this is how my mind has made sense of it. And this is what I have seen over multiple examples that I can confidently put in the reality shifting paradigm. But if we live in a matrix, and if we are computers and we're living in a simulation, then it could be that these people aren't even real. It could be that they're holograms themselves, and there could be a completely different framework that we could operate in and talk about things. But assuming that everybody is real and conscious, and that it's not just a two-dimensional simulation, then there are 3D bodies that are traversing different reality layers and different dimensions. And as people are shifting between one to another, you will see them go invisible. Isn't it fun? It's so fun. You yourself will also go invisible, assuming that everything is internally consistent and this is how it works. I'm still exploring it. If you have invisibility stories, please leave them in the comments. I would love to hear them. And if you're interested in exploring reality shifting, coaching, working one-on-one with me, please feel free to email me and reach out. We can do a session. We can do a weekly or monthly intensive. We can figure out what works for you. You'll know. You'll feel it, and it'll keep tugging at you. So we'll figure out a way to make it work. You can email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com. Okay, we'll talk soon.